Hello again. So for those of you who are new to our room, my name is Marcia Wright. I'll be here with you until lunchtime. And right now I would like to introduce you Dr. Doug Jackson. He's the president and CEO of Project C.U.R.E, where I had the opportunity of volunteering a few years ago. It was a wonderful experience for a very valuable cause. So thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Doug. And his global insight title this morning will be Doing Well by Doing Good, a case study in effective corporate social responsibility. Please help me welcoming Dr. Doug Jackson. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm concerned about the future of America. They tell me that millennials don't see themselves owning cars, and they're going to get rid of garages. And the problem with that is that everything in America that is any good has come out of a garage. Got Apple computers, you got Microsoft, Nirvana, Project C.U.R.E. Let me tell you just a few minutes about Project C.U.R.E. because I know that some of you, this is your first introduction, and I'm not going to talk about Project C.U.R.E. today except just by way of background, but you kind of need to know where we're coming from. This is an organization that my mom and dad started in their garage in Evergreen, Colorado in 1987. When I was a little kid, my dad and mom moved to Denver. They came here to get rich. My dad got involved in a couple of little projects. One's called Winter Park, and the other one was called Vail. He did okay. In fact, he got really rich. And then he discovered something that we don't teach kids anymore, and that is you can be rich and not happy. And so my dad and mom started a little foundation. This was well before Bill Gates. And they gave all the money away. And then my dad had time on his hands. And so he thought, well, what could I do with this time? And he said, I still know how to make money. I can go around the world and teach people how they can help their economy. And he ended up down in Brazil. And he was working in Brazil with President C.U.R.E. They had about 3,000% inflation at the time. And my dad's interpreter was a little medical student. Her name was Lorena. Lorena's mom was a doctor. She said to my dad one day, she said, would you like to come with me on the weekends? We do this little medical project in a favela outside of Rio. My dad went with her, and it was just a little house, and in the front room was an old metal exam table and a box of re-rolled bandages, and the pediatrics ward was the bedroom, and that was painted pink, and it had a baby scale and some Walt Disney posters, and the dental unit was the back porch of the kitchen, and the dental drill you would run with your foot like an old sewing machine. And my dad looked at this guy, and he says, I don't get it. I'm a developer. You're the medical guy, but you can't practice medicine like this. And he came back to Denver, and he told this story to a friend of his, and this guy named Greg, he said, hey, I'll tell you what. He said, my partner Pete and I, we own a medical wholesale company. He said, we'll give you things. They gave my dad $50,000 of brand new medical supplies, and my parents shipped that off down to Brazil. Another $200,000, another one. Fast forward today, we ship about 5 to 7 semi-truck trailers a week. Needles, syringes, gloves, catheters, CAT scan machines, x-ray machines, beds, tables. We're operating in Denver, Phoenix, Nashville, Houston, Chicago, Philadelphia. I'm running about 450,000 square feet of warehouse. We only have 35 paid staff and 30,000 volunteers. And we're making a big difference. Our average client will work today for 12 hours and make $1. And when you're that poor, you just can't afford health care at all. So those folks, when they get pregnant, instead of being excited about it, it can be a death sentence. And we're going in and we're changing that. The reason that matters is because about a third of the projects that we do every year we do with corporate social responsibility partners, and that's really what I wanted to talk to you about our corporate social responsibility efforts, the things that we work with, the things that we do with businesses just like you every day. And I want to share with you 3 different thoughts, and each one of these thoughts is going to start a word that starts with the letter P, all right? I like alliterations. When you come to our shop, we have Cure Kits and Cure Cargo, and and C.U.R.E couriers and C.U.R.E clinics, and my kids are named Caitlin, Kendall, and Caroline. I'm not kidding you. So we're going to alliterate on P. And the first thing that I want to share with you is a purpose. If you're going to do an effective corporate social responsibility program, you have to have a purpose. It's the flavor of the day. And here's the temptation. And the thing that I would be concerned about if you walk away from this and say, you know what, everybody else is doing this. You got Ben and Jerry's with the ice cream. You got Timberland with the shoes. You got Subaru with the cars. We work with an organization called Figs that looks just a lot like Tom's, right? Does anybody have Tom's? The crappiest pair of $50 shoes I've ever bought, and I probably have 10 pair of them, right? Because I like the cause. Figs does the same thing with surgical scrubs. Every time a nurse buys a pair of Figs scrubs, Project C.U.R.E gets the scrubs. We take them and put them into places like Zambia, where those little nurses have never had a brand new pair of scrubs. And the temptation is to say, you know what, I want to do that because everybody expects me to do that, so I'm just going to do it. It's the flavor of the day. Just tack a number up there, and we got ourselves a corporate social responsibility program. Don't do that. Simon Sinek said, start with why before you get to the what. We all like to start with the what first, don't we? So why? Why is it that you want to do this? Why is it that you want to be engaged in philanthropy? Let's dig down to the why first. I have a friend of mine that lives in Washington, D.C. His name is Ralph Moss. Ralph is a very distinguished African-American guy, tall, handsome. He's been working on Capitol Hill for decades. He wears these big round glasses, and his glasses actually match his pocket square. He is dapper. He's the only guy that I know who's not a senator who gets to ride the Senate train back and forth in the Senate building to the Capitol. Mr. Moss, your car is ready, sir. He's been at this for a while. Ralph works for a company called C.U.R.E. C.U.R.E makes wheat flour. They take grain and they grind it up and make flour. And they work in some places all over. It's a privately owned company, headquartered in St. Louis, Missouri. And Ralph is a representative in Washington, D.C. C.U.R.E works in some places where we work, like the Congo and Haiti. And when they started into the Congo, they discovered that most of the people that are going to go to work for them are sick. And the healthcare system was broken. And you can't build a business on sick people. The truth is, you could take every stone in Afghanistan and build schools with it, and if those little girls are sick, they ain't going to school. Buy every mom in Africa a heifer cow. If mom is sick, the cow doesn't give milk. Why? Because, first of all, these are our employees, and this doesn't work if they're sick. So they built a hospital. That's when I get the call from my buddy Ralph. He said, Doug, I need you to put all the stuff in the hospital. So we did exactly that. They built the building. We put all the stuff in, the beds, the overbed tables, all of those pieces. We put it all in there. Ralph went over with the owner of the company. The governor was there. The governor's wife was there. The entire community came out to dedicate this big hospital with all of this medical equipment supplies. And this mom is walking through there, just one of the community people. And she went over to the governor's wife and she said, so, madam, let me understand. This hospital is what you get if you or your husband works for C.U.R.E? And the governor's wife said, no, ma'am. This is the hospital that you get because C.U.R.E is in this community. Could you make the argument that, yeah, it makes it easier for them to work in Congo because they do things like that? Yep. There's countries that don't mind paying bribes. We don't do that. So how do you go and impact your community and your culture? Corporate social responsibility. I was having this conversation with a corporate social responsibility officer at one of the big companies that we work with. I said, so why do you do this? She said, well, the shareholders expect it. Good. But she said, you know what the deal is? We are in competition for the best hearts and minds coming out of universities, and these millennials, doggone them, will sit down there at the interview and they'll ask you, so what do you guys do? And they don't want the answer of, well, we do a drive every year. The reason that they like working with us is because we actually put them into the warehouse and say, here, sort this stuff. Put it in a box and put it on that container, on that semi-truck trailer, and we're going to get it out and we're going to help some people that need some help. And by the way, your colleagues on the other side of the ocean are going to unload this stuff and carry it into the hospital. That, my friends, is effective corporate social responsibility. And there is not a millennial in this town that doesn't want to go to work for your company if it is true. If you've started with the why first. The first P, a purpose. The second P, a partnership. A partnership. We do things too transactional. We forget sometimes that we are human beings and not human doings. This, by the way, if you have no intention of ever doing corporate social responsibility, it's okay. Take this one home with you. Because everything you do in business is going to be better if you remember this is the rule of a partnership instead of a transaction. One of my favorite partners at Project C.U.R.E is Newmont Mining. Newmont's in the extractive gold industry. They run mines all over the world. They have the same problem that my buddy Ralph had at Seaboard, right? They show up into a little community in Ghana, West Africa. Everybody's sick. Hospitals aren't working. Mommies are dying. So we started working with Newmont, and we worked with them in South America, and we worked with them in Africa, and we worked with them in Asia. And we created what was a partnership. There are people who are on the west side of I-25, come across to the east side of I-25, and they help work in the warehouse. And they sort medical supplies, and they load containers. And it goes over to places like Ghana, where their teammates unload the containers and put it into the hospitals, right? That was the agreement. We actually signed a memorandum of understanding. This is what we do at Project C.U.R.E. This is what you do at Newmont. Here's the difference. That was a transaction. We started doing a program we called Helping Babies Breathe. Now, in the medical industry, you have exactly 60 seconds to save the life of a little baby after birth. You got to get him breathing. You got to get him warm to keep him alive, right? A lot of these midwives don't understand that. So they'll take a little baby that's got primary apnea. That just means they're born without breathing. You got to smack them on the butt. Screaming babies are happy babies, so you got to get them going, right? If they don't understand that, they just put the baby on the shelf. Baby doesn't make it. We can fix that. So we went back to Newmont and said, hey, we've got this program. And we want to start working in the mine sites, in those hospitals where we've already put needles and syringes and gauze and gloves and beds and x-ray machines and ventilators. We want to go back into those hospitals, and now we want to start training nurses and midwives on how to save these little babies. You got a 25% infant mortality rate. We want to drop that. And here's what we're going to do. Because we're partners, we're just going to add that on, and I don't want any more money from you. When's the last time you heard that? It's like going to your favorite restaurant and they just bring you a dessert just because, right? Then I get this call from Gary Goldberg. Gary's the CEO of Newmont Mining. These guys get beat up all the time, right? Oh, we don't want to mine in our backyard. You guys are ruining the environment, blah, 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 blah. He takes it. Gary's one of the biggest philanthropists I've ever met. He called me up one day and he said, Doug, I got a proposition for you. He said, the proposition is, he said, my wife and I, we love the Rockies. He said, there's a thing called the strikeout clock. He said, I want to do that on behalf of Project C.U.R.E. And what that means is that every time a Rockies pitcher pitches a strikeout, you guys get $50. He said, here's the condition, and this is why I wanted to call you. He said, the condition is that you have to spend that money on something other than a Newmont Mining project. Huh. Why would you do that? Because we are partners. It's not a transaction. Guess how much we raised last year? We didn't even go to the World Series. $70,000 that we got to go to other partners and say, hey, because of the largesse of Gary and Newmont, we get to finish your container over here into a country like Belarus that doesn't even have a mine. They don't have any gold. Unbelievable. This is what happens. And by the way, when you go to the Rockies game, there's a strikeout, and I hope there's a lot of strikeouts for a lot of different reasons, right? You're going to see that scoreboard light up, and it says Newmont strikes gold for Project C.U.R.E. Their color is blue. That whole screen goes to red, and our little logo dances all the way around that stadium in front of however many tens of thousands of people all year. The guys on the radio are talking about it. The guys on the TV talk about it. This is a partnership, and Gary didn't have to do that. It wasn't in the contract. We are human beings, not human doings. And when things start to get magic is when we remember that I like you, I want to work with you, and I want to help you. And that's what a partnership really means. So we got purpose, partnership. The last P that I'm going to share with you is in person. In person. I was called to a dinner one night not too long ago, and this friend of mine says, hey, I got a buddy that started doing business in this country, and he's having a hard time. He said, you guys do a lot of work in this particular country, and we're just wondering if we could take you out for drinks and dinner and just pick your brain a little bit about what's going on. I said, sure, that's fine. We sit down, and he tells me the story about how he had decided to put his right foot in, and that's where the trouble started, right? You guys know that song. It was his first foray into doing international business, and it really wasn't working very well. He had put a lot of money over there. He wasn't getting the product back. Now he's got an issue. Doug, what do you think I ought to do? I said, well, tell me about your partner. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, okay, let's just start at this. Tell me about the first meeting you guys had. What was this guy like? He said, well, we had about a 10-minute conversation. And I said, wait, you flew all the way? No, he said it was on the phone. I said, well, tell me about your second meeting. Well, we Skyped the second meeting. Well, how about the third meeting? Well, we kind of Skyped that one too. He said, have you ever been over there? No, well, I was going to go, but the State Department, and the warning, and I just, and then the flight, and I was busy. The answer to that would be no. You've never been there. I'm going to get a T-shirt made. I threatened my staff with this, right? I got a bunch of millennials that want to email everything. They want to get on Skype. My T-shirt is going to say, you can't Skype this shit. You've got to go. Get on the plane and go. Contrast that to this. We had an issue in Mexico. They had a little election. This was back a couple of years ago. And the new guy didn't know who we are. Now, the fact is, we roll a lot of 53-foot containers across the border into Mexico, and we're going into these little villages in Guerrero and in Chiapas and places where it's really tough. And all of a sudden, our border crossings became problematic. So Beth and I, we flew down to Mexico. We sat down with this guy. It was very formal. We're on one side. We're in Mexico City, so everybody's dressed up, suit and tie. Those people look like awesome in Mexico City. If you go, take your best clothes. We start out, his English is better than my Spanish. It's his office, so we were in Spanish. And about halfway through the meeting, I said, look, here's the thing that I understand. There are people in the United States that are going to send stuff into Mexico, and they're going to say it's charity, and when they get it there, it disappears, and then they sell it on the market. I've seen it happen. That's not me. And I wanted to come down and sit with you and let you ask questions so that you know me. Here's my cell phone number. Here's my home address. We are now completely transparent with you. And he looked at me and he said, I got to thank you for honoring me and coming to my office. He said, there are people that were born in my country, that live in your country, that send stuff back to my country. They don't even know what it is, and I don't know who they are, and my job is to make sure that they don't do stuff that's wrong. I said, I'm here to help you with your job. He said, nobody ever does this. And I walk away thinking, why not? It's easy to get to Mexico City. It's as fast for me to get down there as it is to go to my own capital, Washington, D.C. Why don't you just buy an airplane ticket and go see these people? That's why we always do a needs assessment before we ship. That 180 containers that we're shipping, 200 containers a year, every one of those started with somebody from my organization going to the middle of Africa. You fly into Lagos, Nigeria, drive 8 hours into Ekiti State. You go into a hospital that has no air conditioning. This is not fun. But it honors those doctors and nurses. We sit there and ask them 3 to 4 hours of questions, take pictures of every room in that hospital. Why? Because you can't Skype this. If you're going to do this, commit. If you're going to do this, build a partnership. If you're going to do this, start with that purpose. The purpose is to take care of other people. Do that thing. Do that thing. Show up. Build the relationship. If you never, ever do business overseas, it's still the same rules. Get in your car and drive to Arvada. I know it's really miserable out there, but you can do this. I'd leave you with this. Margaret Mead said, "Never underestimate the power of a small, dedicated group of individuals to change the world. Indeed," she said, "it is the only thing that ever has." That could be you. We do that every day. I'd invite you to join us. Thanks and God bless.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Doug. And I want to share with you, I was born and raised in Brazil. I live in Arvada. Muito obrigada. Thank you very much, Doug. So please join us. In 10 minutes, we are going to be here with Scott Byington talking about Queen City Roasters. So see you in 10 minutes. Thank you very much.